The top stories tonight in Y News. The Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases has not given its go signal yet to administer booster shots and third dose of COVID-19 vaccines.
The Department of Environment and Natural Resources will implement a time limit on people who will visit the Manila Bay Dolomite Beach.
A transport group says the 1 billion peso aid will be insufficient for PUV drivers to cope with the rising fuel prices. Several senators have formalized their call to ban the option of substitution for those who just want to withdraw their candidacy in elections.
Ten foreign ambassadors in Turkey have been ordered to leave the country.
And expect colder days ahead as Pag-asa declares onset of the amihan season. Good evening, Philippines and the world. We are now reporting live from Quezon City. Today is Monday, October 25, 2021. I am Herlene Delgado.
Join us in the next hour as we deliver today's top stories around the Philippines and in other parts of the world. I'm Angelo Castro III.
We are also seen in 1,935 satellite monitoring centers nationwide and via live streaming worldwide through the UNTV News and Rescue social media accounts and our website, untvweb.com. I am William Pio.
First in the news. The Department of Health has approved the recommendation of the Health Technology Assessment Council to administer booster shots and additional jabs against COVID-19 for priority groups. This as vaccines continue to arrive in the country. But this might have to wait for a while. Aiko Miguel details why.
The Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases has not given its go signal yet to administer booster shots and third dose of COVID-19 vaccines. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said in a briefing that the matter will still be discussed in the next IATF meeting.
Yan po ay recommendation ng HTAC. That will be tackled po, I think, in the next meeting of the IATF this Thursday.
On the other hand, World Health Organization representative to the Philippines, Dr. Rabindra Abeya Singh, has suggested that the Philippine government give third vaccine doses to the elderly who got Sinovac or Sinopharm shots. However, senior citizens who have not yet given even a single dose of a COVID-19 vaccine should still be prioritized in the government's COVID-19 vaccination program.
In this allocation of third dose, we continue to urge that priority should be given to offer first and second dose to who have not had access to vaccines. And then we start the third dose administration with the most elderly. So this is what our position is now, so that we maximize the benefit of the third dose in those groups who will be receiving third dose. But again, the priority is to provide the first and second doses to those who have not been able to get a single shot, which is about 3 million people, unfortunately, still in the Philippines among the elderly.
The Metro Manila Center for Health Development and the Dr. Josef Abella Memorial Hospital will conduct catch-up vaccinations for senior citizens against COVID-19. Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergeres stressed the importance of vaccinating senior citizens alongside the general adult population and the pediatric vaccination. Meanwhile, the country is now under low-risk case classification, according to the Department of Health. But Undersecretary Vergeres said the Philippines cannot yet declare that the COVID-19 is in its endemic stage already.
Pero sa ngayon po, mukhang hindi pa ho natin madideklara talaga na endemic na siya. No? Kailangan po natin pag-aralan maigi, lalong-lalo na nagmi-mutate itong virus na to every so often. So kailangan marami ho tayong factors na kino-consider before we consider an organism or a disease to be endemic in a country.
Today, the DOH disclosed that the country has recorded its first case of B.1.1.318 variant. B.1.1.318 is a COVID-19 variant under monitoring based on the classifications of the World Health Organization. Aiko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Malacanang warns complacency over Manila Bay Dolomite Beach frenzy may lead to potential super spreader event. The Department of Environment and Natural Resources meanwhile rules out closing it to the public. Rosa Licos will tell us why.
Authorities have modified the guidelines to only allow certain number of people inside the Manila Bay Dolomite Beach. This comes after thousands flocked to the newest tourist attraction over the weekend. Visitors will come in batches and stay in the area for 5 minutes. In a radio interview, Environment and Natural Resources Undersecretary Benny Antiporda said they, together with the Manila City Government, has deployed additional marshals to ensure that people are complying with minimum health standards. The Philippine National Police and Manila Police District likewise is in coordination with other government agencies to ensure the public's safety.
Sa pagdami ng tao natin sa Dolomite Beach, yung last 2 weeks, nagkaroon kami ngayon. Ongoing ngayon yung aming pakikipag-usap sa DENR at sa ating DOT kung paano natin ma-improve pa yung kasalukuyang naging sitwasyon nung nakaraang 2 linggo. At pagkatapos siguro nito, may mga pagbabago kaming ipapatupad sa pagpapasok at pag-aantabay sa ating mga tao.
Naunawa natin ang kasabikan ng ilan nating mga kababayan na lumabas dahil sa mahabang lockdown. Subalit hindi dahilan ito upang ipagsawalang bahala ang kaligtasan ng bawat isa, lalo na ang mga batang isinama nila gayong malinaw sa patakaran na hindi pa pwede silang lumabas under the COVID Alert Level 3 status.
Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque reminds the public that the country is still facing a pandemic and people must not be complacent. Secretary Roque also called out parents that children are still not allowed to visit the controversial Dolomite Beach.
So hindi pa po pwede talagang magpasyal-pasyal ang mga bata. So una-una nananawagan po kami sa ating mga kababayan, no? Pandemya pa po. Bagamat bumababa po ang mga kaso natin, nandyan pa po si COVID-19, no? So wag po tayo magpabaya, no?
Meanwhile, the Department of Health said there was definitely a violation of the IATF protocols. Rosa Licos, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
In other news, the Interagency Task Force has ordered the closure of cemeteries from October 29 to November 2. This is due to the ongoing threat of the coronavirus. In Metro Manila, cemeteries have already deployed force multipliers. JP Nunez will tell us why live. Yes, JP, good evening. Go ahead.
Yes, William, good evening. This to manage the crowd and help maintain peace and order as people are expected to flock in cemeteries in the coming days. Manila North Cemetery already coordinated with the City of Manila for the deployment of additional police and traffic management bureau personnel, public safety officers, and medical response teams.
Kompleto naman po kami dito sa loob ng Manila North Cemetery dahil ito po ay tinulungan po kami ng ibang interagency. Ganon din po, meron tayong MTPB, yung Manila Traffic Enforcer natin na nagmamanage naman po ng traffic. At the same time, tumutulong din po sa loob para po ma-secure yung loob na walang nagkukumpulan pagdating po dun sa kanilang puntod.
Meanwhile, in Manila South Cemetery, situation is still manageable, but around 100,000 visitors are still expected before the closure on October 29.
Sa ngayon po, ang sitwasyon natin dito sa Manila Cemetery, tahimik, wala naman ganong problema tayo. Marami po tayo naharang ng mga bata. Usually, hindi natin pinapapasok talaga. May kit po tayo doon.
Cemetery administrators discourage parents to bring along their children as minors are not yet allowed to enter.
Hindi po kami pumapayag na pumasok po yung mga bata. Yung mga minors po, hindi pa rin po sila allowed pumasok sa Manila North Cemetery. Pero allowed naman po ang mga senior citizen. Ang medyo mahigpit lang po kami pagdating po sa 65 years old and up. Kasi yan po yung mga minsan hindi na po kayang maglakad.
William, they also remind the public that illegal items such as flammable materials, lighters, gambling materials, radios, pointed and sharp objects like cutter and knife will be confiscated. That is our latest live. Back to you, William.
Yes, thank you very much, JP Nunez, for that live report. Meanwhile, the Department of Education, or DepEd, is confident that it will meet the target of 100 schools to participate in the implementation of face-to-face classes before its implementation on November 15. Dante Amento details why.
The Department of Education said that the limited face-to-face classes in public schools will push through on November 15. According to DepEd Secretary Leonor Briones, from 30 schools, as of October 25, 2021, there are now 90 schools ready to conduct physical classes.
So, kung makukumpleto natin yung 100 public schools, ako naniniwala dahil even as mayroong nag-back out, mayroon namang sulat ng sulat sa akin na mga mayor, mga parents na gusto nila ang face-to-face. Pagkatapos, idagdag natin yung 20 private schools. Tapos sa international schools, so far, isa pa lang ang talagang complete na proposal. Tapos, kailangan din ng orientation para sa parents, sa LGUs, at saka sa school personnel. Hindi pwedeng magbukas na lang tayo dadating yung mga bata.
10 schools are ready to join the limited in-person learning in Region 1 and 3. 5 in the Calabarzon region, 3 in the Bicol and Western Visayas regions, 8 in the Central Visayas, while 10 in the Eastern Visayas. There are also 8 from Zamboanga Peninsula, 6 from Northern Mindanao, 8 from Davao region, 5 from Soxargen, and 14 from Caraga region. Meanwhile, no list of 20 schools from private schools that will participate in physical classes has been released. But according to DepEd, the schedule of face-to-face classes in private schools will begin on November 22. Joseph Noel Estrada, Managing Director of the Coordinating Council of Private Educational Associations of the Philippines, or COCOPEA, said private schools are ready to retrofit their facilities to comply with health standards, including physical distancing for students and school personnel. Dante Amento, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
The Philippines recorded 4,405 new cases of novel coronavirus disease, or COVID-19, pushing the nationwide case count to 2,761,307. The Department of Health, or DOH, also reported 7,561 new recoveries and 149 new deaths. Total recoveries rose to 2,661,602, while total deaths climbed to 41,942. According to the DOH, 21 duplicates were removed from the total case count, as 14 of these were recoveries. Meanwhile, the overall global COVID-19 caseload has topped to 243,747,953, while the deaths have surged to 4,950,232, according to the Johns Hopkins University. The U.S. is the worst hit country with the world's highest number of cases and deaths at 45,444,413 and 735,941 respectively, according to the CSSE. In terms of infections, India follows in second place with 34,189,774 cases and 454,712 deaths. In terms of deaths, Brazil comes second with 605,644 fatalities.
The Commission on Elections, or COMELEC, is trying 3 polling precinct layouts in the 2022 elections. Dante Amento tells us why.
The Commission on Elections is looking for a more efficient setup of polling precincts for the 2022 national and local polls amid the pandemic. The first setup is to have one holding area and an adjacent room that will serve as voting room. Second, 3 rooms intended for holding, voting, and to feed ballots to the vote counting machine or VCM respectively. And lastly, 1 voting room with VCM and voters.
It is a comparative study essentially. Tinitingnan natin kung anong mas efficient kung yung VCM ay nakahiwalay na kwarto so that in one room puro fill up lang, di ba? Dito sa baba, ang setup natin is fill up and actual use of the VCM in the same room.
COMELEC Executive Director for Operations Attorney Teopisto Elna said they have included in their study how many manpower or personnel will they be needing to fit the budget allocated to them.
So tinitingnan natin ngayon yan and tinitingnan natin sa isang voting center ilan ang manpower requirements na kakailanganin natin and ibabangga natin yan sa current na budget na binibigay sa COMELEC.
COMELEC would conduct another voting simulation in the coming days if necessary. Dante Amento, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
Meanwhile, presidential aspirant Senator Ronald Bato Dela Rosa revealed that he and Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte Carpio talked about the upcoming elections. Meanwhile, amid speculation of replacement of certain aspirants, several senators have formalized their call to ban the option of substitution for those who just want to withdraw from the race. Harleen Delgado will tell us why.
PDP Laban Kusi faction standard bearer Senator Ronald De La Rosa shared a photo on Facebook of his meeting with Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte Carpio at the Davao City Hall. According to the senator, he reminded the presidential daughter of the November 15 deadline for substitution of candidates for the 2022 elections. Duterte Carpio confirmed the meeting but did not divulge any details.
Yes, ma-confirm na ko ang post ni Senator De La Rosa, ang iyang Facebook post nga doon na siya picture nga gi-post. Ma-confirm na ko nga nahitabo na siya kaganina dinhi sa ko ang opisina alas 11 sa udto.
Earlier, De La Rosa denied speculations of being a mere placeholder for Mayor Sara, but he also admitted that he would be willing to give way should the presidential daughter decide to run for president. For some of De La Rosa's colleagues, the option to substitute an aspirant who voluntarily withdraws his or her candidacy should be prohibited. Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, along with Senators Juan Miguel Mig-Zubiri, Nancy Binay, Grace Poe, and Joel Villanueva, filed Senate Bill 2439 seeking to amend the Omnibus Election Code by removing withdrawal as ground for substitution. Section 77 of the Omnibus Election Code allows the substitution to replace an official candidate of a registered or accredited political party who dies, disqualified for any cause, or withdraws from the electoral race. But under the proposed bill, the replacement of a candidate will be allowed if the original aspirant becomes incapacitated. The senators believe the option to substitute due to withdrawal has been abused over the years and is observed as a mockery of the process of filing of certificates of candidacy. The deadline for substitution for 2022 elections has been set on November 15. The substitute for a candidate who died or was disqualified by final judgment may file a COC up to midday of Election Day, May 9, 2022, provided that the substitute and the original candidate have the same surnames. Harleen Delgado, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The Philippine National Police vows to continue to serve and protect the public. This after the improvements in their trust rating has been noted. Lea Ilagan details why.
The Philippine National Police attributed the improvement of its trust rating to the hard work, efforts, and sacrifices of all personnel in preserving the integrity of the organization. Based on the survey conducted by independent pollster Publicus Asia Incorporated from October 11 to 18, PNP achieved improvements in trust with 5-point gain in total high trust and an 8-point drop in total low trust.
Ito naman ay bunga ng aming pagkakaisa at pagtutulungan upang patuloy na may balik ang tiwala at respeto ng ating mga kabayan sa kanilang pambansang pulisya sa pamamagitan ng agresibong reforma na nag-uumpisa sa kalinisan ng bawat police station na siyang aming frontline services para sa ating mga kabayan at ang aming mabilis na aksyon sa mga reklamo at paghingi ng tulong ng ating mga kababayan, kabilang ang kampanya sa paglilinis ng aming hanay.
Eliasar appealed to all police personnel to set aside their personal interests and always prioritize the welfare of the public.
I express my sincerest gratitude to the men and women of the PNP for sharing our passion for reforms by supporting our transformation programs to improve our services to the Filipino people, both as law enforcers and public servants.
He also expressed gratitude to the public and even to other stakeholders for trusting the PNP in performing its mandate to serve and protect the public. Leia Ilagan, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Several new fourth-generation trains meant to be used for the Light Rail Transit Line 1 have arrived today. Light Rail Manila Corporation President and CEO Juan Alfonso said 12 out of the 30 trains have so far been delivered in the country from Mexico and Spain. This would undergo testing and commissioning by Spanish engineers and are set to go into operation next year.
So halos 30% yung headway or mas mabilis siya, no, between trains.
Alfonso said the trains would also fly the soon-to-be-completed Cavite Extension project. Meanwhile, San Miguel Corporation remains on track to open the Metro Rail Transit Line 7 by the end of 2022. SMC President Ramon S. Ang said in a statement, while the company might not reach the estimated target of servicing 300,000 daily passengers once the railway is operational, he assured the trains will serve their purpose of bringing more people from Quezon City to Bulacan faster and safer.
The government provides 1 billion peso fund as subsidy to public utility vehicle drivers due to the continuous fuel price hike. But a transport group says it may be insufficient for PUV drivers. Asher Kadapan Jr. tells us why live. Yes, Asher, go ahead.
Arlene, the number of public utility jeepneys in Metro Manila alone may already reach to about 150,000, and providing 1 billion peso fund for 178,000 public utility vehicle drivers may be insufficient to help all PUV drivers nationwide. The Federation of Jeepney Operators and Drivers Association of the Philippines, or FEDJADOP, explains this as they ask for sufficient aid as price of petroleum products continue to increase.
Pero kung sinasabi po natin 178,000 lahat ng public utility vehicle, mukhang hindi po mako-cover yung ibang sektor katulad po ng PUV, taxis, ganun din po yung mga buses na kasalukuyan po nangangailangan din po ng tulong.
The transport group, however, expressed their gratitude for the unceasing support of the government, but they fear for another fuel price increase that will be imposed for the 9th straight week tomorrow. So FEDJADOP, among others, asked for a win-win solution, as the Department of Transportation has also been reluctant in their petition for fare increase. The transport groups explain they are willing to hold their petition should they be allowed to also operate at a higher passenger capacity from the current 50% provision by the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases.
Kung sa tingin po namin, itong 1 billion plus additional percentage para doon sa mga public utility capacity, siguro po walang dahilan para hindi namin mapagkasundoan ng mga leader na i-atras na lang po.
Arlene, the Development Budget Coordination Committee announces that the 1 billion peso subsidy to the PUV drivers will be disbursed through the Pantawid Pasada program in the remaining months of the year. Arlene.
Thank you, Asher Kadapan Jr. reporting live.
The Philippine Atmospheric, Geophysical, and Astronomical Services Administration has announced the onset of the Northeast Monsoon or Amihan season. Pag-asa observed the gradual cooling of the surface air temperature over the northeastern part of Luzon. Due to this, surges of cold temperatures will likely prevail in the coming months. Meanwhile, Pag-asa said, with the ongoing La Nina, the northeast monsoon rainfall may be enhanced that could trigger floods, flash floods, and rain-induced landslides over susceptible areas. It advised the public and all concerned government agencies to take precautionary measures to mitigate the potential impacts of these events.
For the news abroad, New Zealand government removed the human immunodeficiency virus or HIV from the list of medical conditions deemed likely to impose significant cost. New Zealand Immigration Chief Medical Officer Dr. Rob Forward said removal would mean that the individual health circumstances of each applicant with HIV would be assessed on a case-by-case basis. Previously, INZ was obliged to determine that a resident visa applicant with HIV did not have an acceptable standard of health. He said INZ would still include HIV testing as a requirement for visa applicants intending to stay in the country for more than 12 months. A research study has confirmed that COVID-19 survivors find it difficult to function normally several months after they have recovered from the infection. Ruth Bahe tells us why live. Good evening, Ruth.
Good evening, Elsie. The study reported that the high frequency of cognitive impairment, or what's usually known as brain fog, is consistent with what the Center for Disease Control has reported previously as a common long-term effect after a person is infected with COVID-19. Prominent cognitive impairment includes processing speed, phonemic fluency and multitasking, and even affects the ability to retain new memories. The research, which started from April 2020 up to May 2021, was participated by 740 multiracial group of people, aged 18 years and above with no history of dementia. The test results show that such impairment is more common in hospitalized patients and in those people who had severe illness or been sent to the emergency department. Researchers believe that further studies are needed in order to recognize the risk factors causing the cognitive dysfunction and come up with a long-term treatment. Elsie?
Thank you, Ruth Bahe. A deepest rift between Turkey and some of its NATO allies could ensue after foreign ambassadors in the country demanded the release of Osman Kavala. Marvi Delphine will tell us why live. Yes, Marvi?
Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the Turkish president, has demanded the expulsion of 10 Western ambassadors. Ambassadors of Canada, Denmark, France, Germany, the Netherlands, Sweden, Finland, the United States, and New Zealand, who all called for a resolution to demand Osman Kavala's release. Philanthropist Kavala has been imprisoned for 4 years after being charged with funding nationwide protests in 2013. He also participated in an unsuccessful coup in 2016 and has since then remained in detention. In a statement by the Turkish U.S. Embassy, they called out the unfair ruling of Kavala's case, stating his acquisitions are only overturned with more cases. Erdogan, in response, gave an order and immediately declared the 10 ambassadors as persona non grata. With 6 of the 10 countries who demanded the release, the European Parliament President David Sassoli commented on the action of Erdogan, saying it was a sign of an authoritarian drift of the government. Elsie?
Thank you, Marvi Delphine. On what was described as a landmark legislation, the Morrison government in Australia released a draft bill on Monday to tighten privacy codes for social media companies. Maeve Dog will tell us why live. Maeve?
Elsie, the Privacy Legislation Amendment Bill aims to protect teenagers from the harmful effects of social media on their mental health. Senator Michaela Cash said this world-leading legislation considers the interests of young people before the commercial interests of big tech companies. One of the proposals is for social media platforms like Facebook and Instagram to take all reasonable steps to verify a user's age. Parents' permission will also be needed for users aged under 16 to sign up.
If passed, the proposed bill will impose guidelines on how personal information is handed on to organizations and will impose tougher penalties. In 2018, a survey by the Headspace Foundation found that 37% of young people pointed to social media as the reason for their mental health deterioration. Ms. Cash further said that while there have been positive changes with some social media platforms, others are still continuing to turn a blind eye to the harm brought to children from the misuse of personal information. Elsie?
Thank you, Mavian Dog. And those are the reasons behind the news in other parts of the globe. I am Elsie Marcos, live from Auckland, New Zealand. Good evening.
And before we close, we will leave you with a word, giving glory to God. From the book of Psalms, chapter 55, verse 22, it says, "Cast thy burden upon the Lord, and he shall sustain thee. He shall never suffer the righteous to be moved." And those are the reasons behind the news, October 25, 2021. I am Harleen Delgado.
Reasons we deliver to you as they unfold. I'm Angelo Castro III.
And because we need to know, we will always ask why. I am William Theo. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
Pwede talagang magpasyal-pasyal ang mga bata. So unang-una nananawagan po kami sa ating mga kababayan, no? Pandemya pa po. Bagamat bumababa po ang mga kaso natin, nandyan pa po si COVID-19, no? So wag po tayo magpabaya, no?
In this allocation of third dose, we continue to urge that priority should be given to offer first and second dose to who have not had access to vaccines, and then we start the third dose administration with the most elderly.
Pero kung sinasabi po natin 178,000 lahat ng public utility vehicle, mukhang hindi po mako-cover yung ibang sektor katulad po ng PUB, taxis, ganun po yung mga buses na kasalukuyan po nangangailangan din po ng tulong.